You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Monday, December 30th. We just finished watching the 49ers' last primetime game of the season, the long-awaited game against the Detroit Lions. Of course, given how the 49ers season has gone so far, weren't expecting much of a competitive battle. But I guess silver linings, the 49ers were actually competitive in this game. And joining me to talk about it is my post-game co-host, Adam. Adam, were you just as surprised as I was that the 49ers, probably looked the best they have all season on offense for the most part?
Yeah, I mean, you're sitting there as the Detroit DC, and you're sitting there all week they got their fourth string O-line in. Maybe we should send some heat at these guys, and the entire first half, it's vanilla defense. Shanny's eating them up. I'm like, what? This is where it's just NFL coaches just drive me insane, man. Don't let it fool you that all these guys are just geniuses. They're not. They're absolutely not. And there's some high school coaches I know that are plenty smarter than these guys, right? And are plenty better coaches, but those are the guys that stick it out. Not to say that the Detroit DC isn't a good coach, but it's just come on now. If I can make this adjustment, you can too. And what do you know? They bought a little heat in the second half and things started working out. On the flip side, you could say the same thing about Sorensen. So I don't know. There's a lot to say about factoring in your job, right? But overall, glad to see that the Niners are competitive. Certainly a great first half, minus Jake Moody doing Jake Moody things. Can't wait to talk more about that. Kind of a sour note to end on with not only 2 interceptions from Brock, just not good, but the injury as well. It's just insult to injury times a million. So Detroit gets their revenge. They did nothing to make me believe that they're going to win a Super Bowl. That's for sure. But, hats off to them. Jared Goff played an unbelievable game, minus one of their big time backs. So he answered a lot of questions tonight.
Yeah, I think the 49ers and Lions are going to have a hell of a time at the Pro Bowl. I'll just say that much. But I do think that the hottest topic coming off of this game is, of course, Jake Moody. So let's just get right to that right away, because the 49ers lost, 40-34. They ended up losing by 6 points. Jake Moody missed 2 field goals and an extra point. That is a total of 7 points that the 49ers could have had. And, if you look at it this way, that could have been the difference between the 49ers winning and, the Lions losing. You do have to factor in, of course, the Brock Purdy interceptions. Those certainly did not help. I think when you're looking at reasons that this game was lost, you got to look at both of those players. But let's start with Jake Moody, right? I think after last week, you sense some frustration from Kyle Shanahan. You see the sideline reaction of the Jake Moody miss last week. But then Kyle Shanahan this week, speaking to the media, kind of gave Jake Moody another vote of confidence, right? And, I get it. Maybe it's because you have to trot him out for these final 2 games. You have to keep his confidence up. Well, didn't really go very far this week, given that in those high pressure situations, he did miss those kicks. One was 40 something, and the other one was long. It was 56 or something like that, 58. So it's still inexcusable, right? So I'm wondering what the story is going to be this time in regards to the Jake Moody misses. I think at this point, it's beyond excuses. I know Kyle Shanahan mentioned the high ankle sprain. My question would be, is Jake Moody making kicks in practice? Is he making field goals in practice? Because if he is, it's not a matter of the high ankle sprain. I think that kind of answers your question. And if he is missing some kicks in practice and you do feel like the high ankle sprain has impacted his performance, why not bring in another kicker? I mean, it just really baffles me. I'm not buying the high ankle sprain excuse. What are your thoughts on Jake Moody? And do you think this season is the last we've seen him as a 49er?
Well, Steph, the football side of me is going to tell you that Fred Warner's playing on a broken bone in his ankle, right? And he's not complaining. He's not making excuses. I have no love for kickers, man. If you're a football person, you've been involved in football, there is no love. There's no love. You do what you do. You shake their hand. I'm just teasing. I mean, at the end of the day, it's kind of like a sibling relationship. You're going to give them flack. You're going to, tease them a little bit. Kickers are people too. They are. But at the same time, this is the NFL. You got to get the job done. And if you're incapable of getting the job done, don't kick. Right. So, and the Niners shouldn't force him to kick if he's not 100% either way. Right. I said it last week. Like I couldn't care less how far you can kick the ball. Couldn't care less, right? I'll get 2 spots on the roster, one guy to kick it out of the end zone, one guy who can make it consistently from inside 50, right? I don't need it, don't care about it. Like if you're telling me a guy can't kick the ball past 50 yards and he's 100% accurate, take that all freaking day, right? And this needed to happen. This is like, again, we feel these things starting to align for next season, right? One of the things is we know Jake Moody's not the guy that, based on what we've seen, that's going to win, a playoff game on a clutch field goal. It's just not the guy, right? Yeah. He's, had a rough go of it. Odds not in his favor. It is what it is, man. And it is unfortunately a business. So you get a more reliable kicker in next year. That's a plus, right? But at the end of the day, Lynch had to ride this guy out and hope he panned out until the wheels fell off because he drafted him in the 3rd round. And that's more on Lynch than anything. I said that I tweeted this out earlier. I just listen, John Lynch is one of the greatest football players who's ever lived. He's done an unbelievable job as GM, but oh my God, on my worst day, I would never draft a kicker within the first 5 rounds. It's just
most teams wouldn't.
Yeah. I mean, I think the only other situation, I think the Raiders took Janikowski higher. And I saw the little clip of Gruden talking about how he was drunk one day and he was making kicks during the game. If you haven't seen that story, that is absolutely phenomenal and you should go check it out. But yeah, Steph, at the end of the day, not good enough. They're going to get a new guy in there. If they don't, they deserve everything that's coming to them next season.
Yeah, definitely going to be something that they need to address. And speaking of John Lynch, right, I talked about the sideline reaction we got from Kyle Shanahan last week. This time we got a couple of John Lynch in the booth reactions today. So he looked visibly frustrated, pissed off. You can kind of read his lips after Nick Sorensen, the defense giving up a touchdown on 4th down, no less, to Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide open. You hear him say, what the hell, or putting it lightly probably. But yeah, I mean, that was really bad. And I know Nick Sorensen under some fire by the fan base on Twitter today. And I think, look, I've given Nick Sorensen the benefit of the doubt much of this season. I think a lot of it had to do with some injuries, that you're dealing with a lesser personnel than guys like Steve Wilkes had, than Saleh, than D'Amico. I was blaming it on that. But today, I think it was kind of inexcusable. And I understand it's the Detroit Lions, Ben Johnson, really good offense and all that. But there were some things we saw today that, quite frankly, were inexcusable to see, especially this late in the season when you've had this much runway, when you've had this much experience with these guys in the defense. Just some blown coverages, some kind of questionable decisions, I think, soft zones in some key moments, 3rd, 4th downs that made it easy for the Lions to convert. What were your thoughts on Nick Sorensen's defense in this game?
Yeah, I thought in the key moments he didn't dial something up. Very simple, right? I think Nick Sorensen there's a lot I didn't have a huge problem with, but what I had a monumental, meteoric, unbelievable problem with is when he needed to bring heat or dial up something creative or even a simulated pressure, right? So for those that don't know what a sim pressure is, you show a look like you're giving heat, you drop coverage, right? Something to get the quarterback feeling a little bit uneasy. And it just felt like that never happened, right? And the few times I saw him dial up pressure, you saw the safety coming from way too much depth, no chance to get to the quarterback. So just not good enough. He's had enough time. And, I've obviously brought up the point that he doesn't have that much coaching experience in general. Well, you don't need that much coaching experience to dial something up. Just plain and simple. You got a playbook. You have things you can dial up. You have pressures you can throw at them. It was clear the game plan was we're going to rush for, bend but don't break, hold them to a field goal. And that's not good enough, right? Like against this Detroit Lions team in the critical moments, if you let the one thing you can't let happen is Jared Goff sit back there and throw darts, right? That's what he does best. He's as accurate as any quarterback in the league, maybe the most accurate quarterback in the league right now. Just from a scheme wise, just not good enough, Steph.
I, on the other hand, thought Nick Bosa had a great game. Like he was getting into the backfield quite a lot. And that's when you consider that the Lions have one of, if not the best offensive line in the league. That is definitely impressive. 4 tackles for loss, 4 quarterback hits, 2 sacks. I mean, he was everywhere he was dealing. So that definitely was good to see. He was one of the silver linings of this game for sure. But speaking of, the Lions offense, high powered, we expected that they would score a lot of points against this 49ers defense, right? I think we expected that. What I didn't expect, and kind of what I was talking about at the beginning, was, I guess, the 49ers to keep up. And they did for a better half of this game, especially in the first half. Like, Kyle was in a groove and Brock Purdy was in a groove. And at halftime, Purdy was 14 of 16, 212 total yards, 3 total touchdowns, including one that he ran in. So it was impressive to start the game. And I think it was nice to see that, just this offense looking like its old self. It was encouraging. And then, before we get to where things kind of went awry, what did you think about Kyle Shanahan's play calling? Because I did see some people think, he waited till now to bring all this out. Why did he wait so long? Do you have any counters to that? Because I don't know. I feel like some of this has always been there, but I think the 49ers shooting themselves in the foot in the past has kind of been the reason that it hasn't really looked this good in the past.
Yeah, combo of everything. For me, I think really it's a matter of, I think this was truly one of his more polished play calling, games that he's called all season. But I also this is something I mentioned in either the last show, the show before last. I've always just had this feeling that Kyle Shanahan does his best when he's a little bit limited. It's almost when he has an absolute spoils of options. Sometimes he can get in his own head. But for the most part, that's kind of not true, right? Like last season when he had all his weapons, he was just humming down the field. They were just up and down the field. Without Will, I mean, the Philadelphia game was just ridiculous, right? Like how many straight drives with a touchdown? 7 or something like that? 5 to 7, right? So obviously, the game I'm thinking of is the last time they played Detroit, right? Like at that first half, it felt like Kyle was just a little bit too in his head. The Green Bay game, it felt like at times like they ran like a draw play with Jawan Jennings, and it was just like, what in God's name is going on here? And then he kind of got back to the basics and getting his playmakers the ball, and they started moving the ball again. So all in all this to be said, Kyle Shanahan is a generational play caller. He's unbelievable. And if this team retools the right way, they're going to be right back to scoring 30 points a game. Always had a lot of faith in Shanahan. I don't think he's perfect, but shoot, there's no coach that's been no offensive coach is perfect. They just find a defensive coordinator that makes them that puts the cherry on top of the sundae, a la Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo.
Yeah,
and that's the truth.
You know, I think Aaron Glenn is a good defensive coordinator. I think the Lions, for much of the season, have been a good defense, but I think injuries have definitely caught up to them, and I think that was somewhat a product of what we saw today as well. But you talk about Kyle Shanahan being limited. I would say from the offensive line standpoint, definitely limited. Like you had 3 of your regular starters, but 2 of those starters are Jake Brendel and Colt McKivitz. Say what you want about those guys. I think they're not exactly the anchors on that offensive line. And then you went into this game with left tackle Charlie Heck, who he signed this week, and Matt Pleasance, I think, who they also signed this week. So those guys rotated at left tackle throughout the game. At left guard, you had Nick Zakelj. So like it was kind of a little iffy situation at offensive line. And given that, I was actually a little impressed by how Brock looked early in the game. I don't think pressure was really a huge factor in this game. Maybe not till towards the end of the game. But yeah, I think the offensive line did good. I can't wait to watch it back and see how some of those guys did, especially Nick Zakelj, because I've been, pretty curious about him. Just really quickly, want to talk about a couple silver linings. Like George Kittle continues to be incredible. He becomes just the 5th tight end in NFL history to have at least 4 1,000-yard seasons. It's his 8th season, so that's pretty good. Others who have done that, Travis Kelce, Tony Gonzalez, Rob Gronkowski, and Jason Witten. So pretty good company for Kittle to be in, and definitely not surprising. He just continues to be incredible. But Adam, this was like the Ricky Pearsall breakout game. This was really impressive. I know, right? Like it took till week 17, but we finally got the Pearsall breakout game that we've all been waiting for. And I think we've seen glimpses of maybe Kyle wanting to get him involved, but then there'd be some mistakes like Pearsall running the wrong route or lining up incorrectly or just little things like that, rookie mistakes. And then you see him get pulled or something like that. That did not happen in this game. It seemed like it all came together for Ricky Pearsall, and he put together a hell of a performance. 8 catches, 141 yards, including a touchdown and a 40-yard catch as well. I mean, it's awesome to see, because I've been seeing, especially this past week, a lot of praise for the wide receivers in this rookie class. Like there's Brian Thomas Jr., there's Malik Neighbors, like McConkey. Like there's a lot of really talented wide receivers in this class. And, I think Ricky Pearsall, of course, because he hasn't gotten a chance to start all season, forgotten in that conversation, of course, and he hadn't really put together a game or a few games worthy of conversation. But I'm glad he got this game on prime time to show not just everyone, but also 49er fans. I think we've all been waiting for this, to see this, and hopefully it carries on into the next game and into next season as well.
Yeah, you had to see something like this, and you love to see something like this because the guy has struggled, and it really, really, mounted last week. Like it really, with him getting cussed out on the sideline, like that's really a tough look for a rookie, especially one that got shot in the chest not just a few months ago. So you wonder how he'd handle it, right? How do you handle tough coaching? How do you handle adversity? How do you handle people saying, I don't know, this guy really hasn't produced, really hasn't shown up. He's kind of running the wrong routes. We're a little scarred from Ronnie Bell. And then he kind of reminded people of the playmaker that he is, right? And this is what we saw in college, the guy with just a knack for catching the ball. You saw that nifty one-handed catch. That's exactly what he did in college. Guy can go up and get the ball. He's got a little yak in him as well. Still got a little bit of a ways to go. If he's going to stay in this league, I think he's really got to be known as an elite route runner, right? Which I think he already is, but he's got to be polished, right? He's got to get all the little details down. If he can do all those things, he's going to be a great member of this team next year. But all in all, we'll take the silver linings where we can get them at this point, and it's really all about next season. So again, that's one more thing that's shaping up, for us to look forward to next season.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the things that we're keeping an eye on, as we mentioned a little bit ago, Brock Purdy, of course, injured late in the game in the fourth quarter with about 2 minutes left. He took a sack, and it was kind of weird to, like, you couldn't really see what exactly happened on the play. At first, they were looking at his wrist. Well, Kyle Shanahan, just speaking with the media right now, told reporters that when he got hit there, they think it's some nerve stuff, and it's a right elbow injury. This is the same injury or not the same injury, but the same elbow, same arm in which he had that surgery on, the UCL repair. So this is concerning, I think. And Kyle saying it's just nerve stuff. I think that's like best case scenario, right? Like nerve stuff, like could get better, right? You get some feeling back in there, but he had some issues gripping the ball and throwing the ball. He was trying to on the sideline. You could tell he couldn't. He even stopped attempting after one attempt of trying to throw the football. And then he had that like just sunken look in his face, similar to, that game in the NFC Championship against the Eagles. And I couldn't help but feel just not a good feeling. I don't get a good feeling about it, just considering it's the same arm that he had that surgery on, that former injury on. I'm really hoping it's not that serious, but yeah. This of course comes into the conversation of Brock and his contract, right? I mean, there's a lot of pressure and conversations happening that will be happening with that as the offseason takes place. And of course, when you have an injury this late into the season on that same arm, that you had repaired surgically, brings a lot of questions, a lot of doubt of like, should we really pay Brock Purdy this much money? But again, let's not get too ahead of ourselves. But I think we're all just a little concerned about Brock and that elbow right now.
This season is the worst thing. The worst season, like I witnessed the 2-14. I witnessed the Singletary meltdown, 6-10. I witnessed the season of Jim Tomsula. I've witnessed like just the way the little things that have just absolutely felt like a death by 100 million cuts, every single game. And if you're a 49ers fan right now, you have every right to just be like, what the hell? Like,
yeah,
just it stink. Okay, stink. Let's just stink. That's fine, right? No, it's just, McCaffrey getting the injury bug. It's this thing with Purdy, almost like the football gods are taunting us mercilessly, like you thought you had it so good last season. Listen, it is what it is. It's just, how can you not feel nauseous for Brock? How can you not feel sick to your stomach for Brock? Like, I feel secondhand anxiety just from being in his headspace of, okay, I have 60 mil a year on the line, and I may have just gotten an injury that convinces a team to not give me that money. Because if this turns out to be the worst case scenario, which, well, golly, knock on wood, it's not. But if it is, I mean, Brock Purdy has got to feel like I can't even put into words what he must be feeling right now. We all like to think these guys are, made of steel and impenetrable and all this talk about how Purdy is just the most mentally tough person on the team. I believe that, but he's also human. He's not a sociopath, right? Like, if that is some real stuff to be going through where like you've worked your whole life to get to this moment just to get a contract, forget the 60 mil, right? Just to get a contract. Yeah. And this is what's happening right now. I mean, that puts John Lynch in a bind. That puts the whole organization in a bind. And going into next season when they, it's really shaping out to be an opportunity. I have no words. I was praying, crossing my fingers, everything that I had, just a wrist injury, just a hand, just take him out for the year. Like, he's done. Okay, no problem. And now you have all sorts of questions. And in a week where Niners fans can't even tune out, you can't even tune out. No. You thought you could tune out and just say, oh, we suck, one game to go. Absolutely not. Now you're going to be on edge, just like the rest of us, hanging on every little rumor and report about what the heck is going on with this guy's poor elbow. I mean, the bad luck it takes to take that. And it had to have been just the face mask running into the elbow. It's just, probably right where the repair is. It's really disconcerting. The last thing I'll say on it is I covered baseball, professional baseball for 5 years, covered a lot of Tommy John surgeries. It was not uncommon for pitchers to have 2 Tommy John surgeries. But this is not how it would happen. It would happen through use, right? Like through
wear and tear.
it, pop it, and then they get it sewn back, and then they tear it up again and get something gone again. But the thing is, like any little mishap in the elbow, even if it's not like a complete tear or something of that nature, it shuts you down for a while, right? You have no choice. But so now we're talking his off season is impacted. I mean, there are not enough words, Steph, to describe how rotten this is and how much this sucks. And if you're a 49ers fan, I'm giving you a hug.
Oh my gosh.
Right now, because this is just sucked, man. Plain and simple.
It's like enough. Whoever has a 49ers voodoo doll, enough. Like we get it. Okay. We get it. We're hurt both literally and figuratively. And looking at an image here that someone posted on Twitter of, face mask hitting right at that elbow. And again, like we're not going to make any sweeping judgments as to what this injury is. As of right now, all that Kyle Shanahan has said is they think it's nerve stuff, quote, nerve stuff, as detailed as Kyle Shanahan is. But they're going to obviously evaluate him and hopefully that's just the extent of it. Like I said, nerve stuff would be a best case scenario for Brock Purdy. So at this point, we hope that's it. But of course, our minds can't help but go a little bit further and think further into the future and think contract, right? And yes, I'm sure even that has crossed Brock Purdy's mind as well. So definitely feeling that right now, but we'll continue to monitor that as the week goes on. With one more game left to go for the 49ers, you're playing the Arizona Cardinals. It's a meaningless game for them as well. Do you just kind of shut Brock Purdy down regardless of the situation at this point? Like, we're sounding yes from Adam, especially because, Dobbs actually didn't do that bad. I know the 49ers generally prefer Brandon Allen as the QB2, but I think with the offensive line situation, and they've done it before in the past too, I forgot which game. It might have been the Bills game in the snow. They made Dobbs the QB2. Dobbs did have to play, the last few snaps in this game, and he did actually score. I think Dobbs gives you some upside that Brandon Allen just doesn't as a quarterback too. So I don't know. I'd like to see if Brock Purdy does get shut down, which I think is possible, which I think would probably be smart of the 49ers to do for a meaningless Week 18 game. Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing Dobbs out there over Brandon Allen. It at least make some things exciting.
Yeah, I mean, we know what we have in Brandon Allen at this point. Maybe we don't. We thought we knew what we had in Sam Darnold, and then look what he's doing now. I hope the guy. I think he's going to play next week. It just feels like that's going to be the case. It's feels like a snowball's chance in hell that Purdy's going to see the field. I think that's the best case scenario is that it doesn't play next week, right? But he adds an element. I'm big on quarterbacks that provide playmaking ability, right? I watched a lot of football, and I tell you what, a quarterback who can make plays off script makes up for a lot. I mean, say Andy Reid's the genius that he is, right? But it's really mostly Mahomes off script, right? It's really Mahomes through the air making the passing game happen. Not to say Andy Reid's one of the best play callers of all time, but the best play callers will tell you they still want the best playmakers because, if I don't have to be perfect with my play calling to score 40 points. That's the best case scenario. And I tell you, as a defensive coach, no matter how good the quarterback was, you went into game day with a little extra peace of mind if you thought the quarterback was a sitting duck. If I'm going up against Kirk Cousins, I feel a little bit more confident. I'm just saying he's a great quarterback. No, don't get me wrong, and has had some brilliant games. But in terms of game planning and having like a concrete game plan that you really believe in as a defense coordinator, you want a sitting duck. So he adds a little bit of element, a little bit of fun factor there, something to keep an eye on, and hopefully something that provides hope that next year, hey, we have a very solid QB2 going into 2025.
Yeah, hopefully. And, obviously there's going to be a lot of questions around the quarterback position. We already kind of previewed those here. I've been warning people that that's going to be the case. So yeah, that will be fun. But to touch back on Jake Moody, I was talking about how Kyle Shanahan gave Jake Moody a vote of confidence speaking to the media. Well, after the game, he was asked if he's going to start evaluating that position, the kicking position. And he said, quote, "We already are. We're evaluating all positions." So there you have it. It looks like there's some decisions and some thoughts about the kicker position. And yeah, it would not shock me if Jake Moody is done after this season. At the very least, you go into camp next season with Jake Moody and another kicker, and you have a competition and you go with the other at the very least, right? Like that's the nicest thing they could do to Jake Moody at this point. And we'll see if he's afforded even that at this point. But yeah, I mean, the story of this game was that the 49ers, despite their best efforts, just not good enough because they still continue to shoot themselves in the foot at inopportune times. And again, I was impressed that it was just a 6-point game. My score prediction was 46-22. So it was a little closer
right on one side
than that, 40-34. But yeah, I mean, this again just felt like another game where it kind of summed up the 49ers season perfectly. Just not enough.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we knew they didn't have enough firepower, but they had a real chance to win this game. Like, let's call it how it is. Brock Purdy just kind of threw the game away in the second half. As good as he did, like he was so lights out. Playing quarterback's all about how you finish games, right? And he finished this one about as bad as he could. With those 2 interceptions, the context behind them, it is what it is. It's 2 straight weeks where like we're losing games because he's throwing picks, right? It's a tough deal. But at the end of the day, like I remember a time when Josh Allen was throwing picks like it was his job to do so, right? Like quarterbacks throw picks. You look at all your greatest quarterbacks. You have all these ideas. Like Brady never threw more than 5 picks in a season. Go look at the stats. He threw a lot of interceptions. Brett Favre threw a lot of interceptions. Peyton Manning threw plenty of interceptions, right? You have to go for it in a sense. You want to be a top 10 QB in this league. You have to have a little gunslinger in you. Jared Goff, like I'm going to take my little chip shot and cheap shot at the Lions here because
go for it.
Based on we deserve it. Based on what I saw tonight, like it's going to be another tragic ending for the Lions at some point this season. I think they at least get to the championship game, but I don't see anything that tells me that this is a team that's going to beat one of those big 3 AFC teams. I didn't see anything that told me that. So could be wrong. Hope I am, honestly, because bless it, Detroit Lions fans, I want to see you win. Nobody wants to see you lose. Like, you're all good in my book. I was at that NFC Championship game, man. Guess what? Lions fans were first class. I told them right there in the seat at halftime. I said, hey, man, if it's got to go to somebody, you're not the Eagles. You're not the Cowboys.
Yeah. That's
least
hated.
Have your day. And quick story time. I sat in front of these two boys, right? They'd flown in from Detroit the night before. They got a last-minute hotel. They played premium dollar, a lot cheaper than I paid for my seat. I actually kind of feel bad. They kind of got screwed. They paid like $1,200 a seat, right? You could tell they're on 0 sleep, and they were first class. Like, at the whole time, like, you could tell they knew everything about Lions football. Like, I told them, you know what? If we got to lose to you, hey, handshake. hot handshake, no problem, right? And I can't lie to you, as amazing as watching that second half was in person with my mom and dad, right next to me and all the cheer, a little bit of me felt little heartbroken for them. As much as to be fair, I bleed this team. Since the womb, I've loved this team, right? And followed this team and all that. Like I'm sure many of you have, but I hope I'm wrong. I hope the Lions go all the way. But based on what I saw tonight, that defense is not going to get it done. It's going to have to be the Jared Goff show, and they're going to have to put up 30 to 40 plus points a game, which I think they can do, but it's going to be tough. The injury bug certainly has not been kind to the Lions.
The most exciting, game of the season comes down to the final game of the regular season, which will be Lions and Vikings for the number 1 seed in the NFC, and that very well could dictate who's going to represent possibly the NFC in the Super Bowl. Darnold, of course, manning the Vikings right now, and he's looking great, and they're looking pretty good. So we'll see how that game goes. But I just wanted to point this out. NBC Sports Bay Area posted this. The 49ers scoring differentials by quarter. So first quarter, second quarter, they're in the plus, right? Third quarter, -18. Fourth quarter, -56. And that is the worst in the NFL. And I think anyone who has seen the 49ers games all in their entirety this season, you would not be surprised by that statistic. It's just kind of mind-blowing, if anything, but this is what we've seen all year. Like the 49ers have essentially blown games, and sometimes it's on the defense, sometimes it's been on the offense, sometimes it's on both.
It turns.
It's on special teams. Like it's everything that's kind of fallen apart for this team. But yeah, being able to finish has definitely been a problem, and that's something they're going to have to address. I don't know how, but they'll have to address it in the offseason, but definitely the crux of this 49ers season for them. And, like I said, this game against the Lions, it was no different. Things just really started to fall apart and rip at the seams for them, until it was an L. So, yeah, I mean, at least it was entertaining for the most part. It was fun. We had some laughs. We had some good times. I think we had all emotions in this game. It was a roller coaster for sure.
Shame on us for thinking anything different.
Yeah.
Or expecting anything different.
I know, right? For a second, they had us going. They had us going in the first half. But Adam, we got one more game to go in this season. A part of I can't wait for it to be over. But also I know I'm going to miss this team when it's all said and done, and the off season is upon us. But Adam, I'm assuming next week we'll see you back for the final post game.
Yeah, should be good to go. I think my final remarks is just remember, when you're watching football, there are no accidents. There are no flukes. There are no, there's one thing I learned from coaching football. It's that you saw everything you see in a game, you saw it in practice. Like you don't spend that much time with people and don't know them intimately inside and out. So, the fact that this team can't finish is not a fluke to me.
Yeah.
I think to finish games, you have to be a Ferrari firing on all cylinders, right? You got to be making the tight window throws. You got to be making the right blocks. You got to be executing at a pinpoint level. And that's the difference. You saw in the NFC Championship game, that second half, the Niners looked like a team firing on all cylinders. They were executing. They were doing all the little things right. And so that's what it takes to win. And that's been the literal difference this season, because lest we forget, it's very although we can easily say and look at the scoreboard and say, oh my gosh, they could just as easily be, 11 and whatever, or they easily could have 10, 12 wins, right? Which is true. But I will tell you, it is a very clear line between winning football and losing football, right? Everybody's bagging on the Chiefs right now. Like, oh, they're the luckiest team. There are no accidents in football. I promise you that. They execute at the right times. They make plays at the right times. They're showing their championship medal, and they're the number 1 seed yet again, and they're going to be the team to beat yet again. You don't get that result 3 years in a row without being a damn good team. So we'll see how we finish this thing off, but at least it's going to end.
At least it's going to end. That is for sure. And, that kind of reminded me of that saying, luck favors the prepared, right? So, yeah, in football, that's usually how it goes as well. And everyone in the comments, appreciate you guys. I know you guys are dropping the Happy New Year's. And, yeah, we're getting the it's almost New Year's Eve tomorrow. Going to be going live with Weston earlier in the day tomorrow for our Player of the Week show. We'll definitely have some candidates for that. So make sure you guys tune into that. El Viejo says, let's leave Moody in 2024. We'll see on that. But yeah, hope you guys have a great New Year's. Stay safe. Touch some grass. Don't let the 49ers get you down. Appreciate all of you. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Audio listeners, leave a rating, leave a review. But for now, folks, have a good rest of your Monday night and Happy New Year's. Peace.